One of the power features of HighLevel is calendars. It allows you to replace things like Calendly and schedule once and connect it all into your CRM, your automation, and do so many glorious things. And so in this video, I'm going to give you a complete 101 course, totally free, everything you need to know when it comes to building, deploying, optimizing, and automating calendars inside of HighLevel. From the main dashboard screen here, to get to calendars, you want to go to the bottom left account settings and then to the calendars option inside of your account settings there. We have an absolutely blank starting place. So I'm going to cover right now how to navigate this and what are the main things you can find. When you have this fully built out, you'll see a list of calendars here that show you the group, the duration, the type, status, date updated, and action, some sort of quick actions there. We'll cover those later. You've got groups, which are kind of critical for organizing calendars as well as team members and who gets applied to what kind of calendar here. You've got a quick action here to create the calendar or to create a calendar in the top right, which is the main button you'll use after you have a list of calendars. And then you have the service menu, which we'll cover with service calendars, rooms, and then equipment, which apply specifically to businesses that are kind of that service space where there might be different equipment or different rooms that are all contingent on when you can book, how long you can book, and sort of need that logic applied to it. For creating your first calendar, you're going to go ahead and click on the add new calendar. Now, there's 4 core types that they highlight. It's personal booking, round robin, class booking, and then collective booking. However, there are more. If you just drop down, explore more types, you also reveal event calendars and service booking calendars, which I referenced earlier. So we're going to cover all 6 of these calendar types, how to build them, how to adjust them, how to edit them. Like I said, this is going to be a complete deep dive into it. If you're building your first calendar, I find the best place to start is just with a personal booking. This would be a calendar with you. So especially if you're the person who's running the company, you're a founder, or that also means you're the head of sales. This is really helpful. And sometimes I even use this with family members if they want to get time to connect. That's weird. Now I sound like I've over engineered my life, but I'm an automator. I love HighLevel. And so, yeah, you can use calendars this way too. And so the first thing you want to do is give it a name. And so I might call it Meet with Matt. You have the option of adding a description here. This description is going to show up on the calendar booking page. And so I'll fill that out. Let's hop on a quick Zoom call to connect. Then you get to assign a team member. So for this type of calendar, it gets assigned to a single team member. I call it the personal booking. It's a one team member booking system here. If you want to assign it to multiple folks, you would use the round robin calendar style. But for our purposes here, we will go ahead and add a team member in. And then you can give it a custom URL. This is going to be the direct URL. I will say this URL is unique to all of HighLevel. So if I try to say like book, well, let's just try that. If I just choose book, it says this slug is already taken. That's because this can show up the full URL in a white labeled fashion using your API domain that you've set for your HighLevel account, or it'll use a generic URL and it'll work with both of those. So this slug has to be actually unique to the entire HighLevel ecosystem. So even if I do book with Matt, unsurprisingly, that's also taken. Book with Mattasino, not taken. So we're going to use that one for now. You've got the meeting duration, the length of the meeting, 30 minutes is fine there. And then you've got availability. You can get pretty specific in terms of the availability here. You can set it per day, or you can set it globally 8 to 5. For availability in calendars, you really want to think of it in multiple tiers of availability. This is the outer container of possible availability. As you add extra layers, it refines it down. So your personal calendar is also going to have certain availability based on what's already booked, what's already blocked off. Just because your outer container of availability is very wide, I could put this at 24 hours a day, it does not mean that yours is going to have the same availability there, but you don't want to make that mistake. So it's kind of like you put your outer availability as maximizing what's reasonable, but don't make the mistake of setting this to 24 hours and then wondering why someone books a call with you at 2 a.m. unless you already have those blocks in place. Then I want to cover the advanced settings here. By clicking on that, you open up kind of like the full settings for a calendar. If I just hit save, it's kind of like a quick deploy on the calendar there. And so now with the advanced settings, we can set an actual logo for our calendar. This shows up in the calendar list as well as on the booking page there. You have the name, which we already set, the description we already set. You can now give it a group. Personal calendars can be in groups. That can be helpful for reporting, for statistics. If you want to see certain reporting inside of an account of how many appointments got booked to a certain group, you can do that. And so collectively managing them by groups is helpful. We don't have any groups right now, but I'll show you how to create a group later. You can also do the invite title. Commonly, you'll be like the name of the person who booked the meeting, which would be the contact name, and then maybe the name of the meeting, which is like meet with Matt. Or maybe if it's you personally, you just might have this as your name. So then when they see it on their calendar, and when you see it on your calendar, it'll show their name, vertical line bar, and then your own name. Still have the assigned team member there. And then you can set things like a custom location. This is kind of cool because you can set any URL, or you can use like a Zoom integration here. They actually have options there for Zoom, Google Meet, phone, a full address. You can actually ask the person who's booking it or integrate with Teams there. But if you go custom, some things that we'll do is, just use a custom URL that redirects to our Zoom room to keep it clean and easy. Or you can actually get really fancy and use something like a custom account value or a contact value there, if that's relevant to how you're setting it up there. But at the very least, a real URL. This could be your full Zoom URL if you've got a static meeting there, or it could be a custom one. Then you can set the color for the event. So if it's a meeting with me, but I want it to show up on my calendar in a certain color because you're that way and you organize your life by colors on your calendar, you can also do that as well. So those are the meeting details. Then you've got availability. This is advanced availability. We saw kind of like the global, which days, and then these boundaries there. Now you can set a different daytime per day. And if you have sort of like ranges where you're maybe only available until, let's say, a slot in the morning at 10 a.m. And then I'm going to clone this. Actually, we'll add a new one first and then say I'm also, let's say you take a break for availability and you're available again at 2 p.m. until 5 p.m. So you might have a scenario like this. This clone option here allows you to copy to all the days or certain days. So that'll really expedite setting availability, especially if you have kind of like, okay, I commonly, I take calls on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday in these slots, and then I could just turn off Tuesday, Thursday, and set my availability like that. As I mentioned earlier, these are outer boundaries of availability. So it'll still reference your calendar and you can allow it to check what's slotted and what's already blocked off, which is really convenient because then as you're managing your calendar on your phone, if you've already synced with like your Google Calendar in here, you add a block on your calendar, it's going to prevent someone from booking in there. The other couple things going on here is you can set date specific blocks. So you got a holiday coming up. And so you say, on this day, I'm unavailable. So I added unavailable on July 4th. And so that way it prevents anyone from being able to book on this calendar on those certain days, which can also be helpful even for, trips, or if there's a specific thing coming up where you want to set specific availability on a day, you can do that here. Down here, they do have the option to look busy, which is how many slots you want to hide. So if you're starting off and you don't have a lot of people on your calendar and you're trying to get booked out, this is kind of an advanced option they've copied over from other booking calendars there, where you can hide 25% of your slots. So it just makes you look busier than you are. If this is a recurring meeting here, you see you can actually turn on recurring meetings, and that's going to eliminate the date specific options there. I'm not going to enable this for now, but if you want to set it as like a standing meeting that you do in terms of availability, or when they book it, it's going to become a recurring thing. So they're booking in to meet with you weekly, sort of a thing. That's what the recurring meeting option is for there. We have the interval the duration, this is helpful to understand. The interval is sort of like how often it's presented in the calendar. If your duration and interval don't have to be the same. So it says here, it's like, this is the amount of time between booking slots will be shown. So if you do 30 and 30, that means every 30 minutes there will be a meeting and you can be booked out every 30 minutes. If I said my meeting interval is 60, it means it needs a 60-minute gap, or like, let's say 45-minute gap, to book a 30-minute meeting. So it's going to show up on the calendar as a 30-minute meeting, but for your peace of mind, you will have a 45, it'll only be presented in 45-minute increments. So they'll be able to book at like, 12 and 12:45 and 1:30 and 2:15, if that makes sense. So, you want to pick an interval that sort of makes sense. And so typically people will just match the interval with the duration, because the other thing you can do here is a buffer time. And so this will prevent it. So this is where you can be like, I want to have a 15-minute buffer time. I mean, it's kind of silly. I might want to, I'll do this. I'll do 15-minute intervals. So every 15 minutes someone could book, and I need a pre-buffer time of 15 minutes. You really want to make your interval match your buffer time there, because in this scenario, they'll be given the option of 12, 12:15, 12:30, 12:45, and 1. When they book, it's a 30-minute duration. So it's going to box out a 30-minute period there, but it's also going to add a buffer. So that means when someone books at 12:15, you'll be unavailable from 12 to 12:45. But because I set it as a 15-minute interval here, they could book again at 12:45 and book again at 1. And so something like this is the intention between intervals and buffer time there. Minimum scheduling notice, hopefully, self-explanatory there, is like how much advance notice do you want to have before they can book? It could be as little as hours. You could say you could do nothing, but maybe you want to have a 1-hour notice, so that even if you have an open slot, you have a little bit of a heads up to prepare for the meeting there. And depending on how busy you are, how much preparation you want, maybe you're saying 1 day. So if it's not booked on tomorrow and you start your day, this happens to me all the time. I'm like, if my day is free or I've got a free slot there, I may not put a block in there, but I just know now that I'm not going to have someone jump on my calendar the same day, and I can tell my wife I'm available to do whatever. And then in terms of date range, this is how much availability is shown. When it's not touched, it's going to show you infinite availability. If you're doing like a sales calendar, you really want to minimize the range out that you're booking those calls there. So you might you could set it as little as 2 days out availability, or 5 days out, or 7 days out. The thing to consider with date range, and if that's your application is like a sales calendar, is weekends. So this date range is not computed based on available days. It's computed on days of the week. So let's say you're working a system where you're like, I want to have 3 days of availability. You can run into a problem where it's Friday morning and it's literally looking only 72 hours in advance. If nobody takes any calls, or you don't take any calls on Saturday and Sunday, and Monday's already booked out, it'll look like you have no availability. So for that consideration, we either have to actively manage that, and when you get to the end of the week, you start buffering it out and giving 5 days, or you take those calls on the weekend, or you just keep it always at like a 5-day or 7-day range there. But depending on a business, you can set the priorities there. I just find some people get stuck in that, or wondering why it looks like there's no availability. And I'll say the calendar, when you have no availability, if it's all booked out, it just sort of has like a loading icon and then just starts skipping months for a few months to eventually tell them like there's no availability left. So it's a very awkward booking process there. And so this is usually the culprit. And the last buffer time, same as the pre-buffer time. This is just now on the backside of it. So you could do a similar thing here, where you essentially want to only have one call in a hour slot here. So a 30-minute call is how much you're talking. You get 15 minutes pre, 15 minutes post as buffers. And because my meeting interval matches these buffers, you'll be able to maximize your calendar. So just to restate, if your meeting interval doesn't match your buffer, or sort of like divisible into your meeting duration here, you'll run into maybe unintentional logic conflicts that make it look like you're less available than you are. And so that's a lot on availability there. The forms and payment options here, this is what it looks like to book into the calendar. You can either do the default form, which just has first name, email, phone, or you can create a custom form there. You can also change the order. Like, do you want to show the form before they pick the date, or do you want to show the date and time selector before they pick the form, which is really nice if you're kind of doing it as like lead capture. If you reverse these and you choose the form before the date and time, you'll collect that information even if there's no availability there. And if you do the reverse, date and time before the form, they might leave and not submit because there was not enough availability. Sticky contacts or pre-populated fields, I highly recommend. This just eliminates one of my, call it pet peeve frustrations, is when you have to re-enter information, especially if you've already collected information from them or you had them do a form before this calendar page. Please put on sticky contacts and don't make folks re-enter that information here. I'll say as a warning, you do not want to have the sticky contact turned on if you're using this internally for your team, because that will override contacts. So as long as the person booking the calendar is unique every time, sticky contact is great. If it's actually the same person, or it's like you've got an appointment setter calling them and then setting the appointments here, if they're using a landing page to book the appointments and not using kind of the internal appointment booking system, this will backfire because it'll just rewrite existing contacts. The consent checkbox, especially for booking here, this is just confirming just a compliance piece here. And this is mostly comes into play with TCPA or HIPAA compliance, stuff like that. You can give them the option to add guests. So as they're booking, they can add in guests. You can have them add name and email or just the count. And then you can also require guests for booking. Certain, industries, maybe this makes sense. If you're a couples counselor, like, I need both of you on the call. And so you have to enter them. So you've got a lot of options there for guests. And then in terms of the confirmation page, or really, confirmation process here, the default is just a message, and that's right here. And you can edit that, or you can actually redirect to a different thank you page. And then you can put in a Facebook Pixel ID to track these conversions automatically. And that basically runs like the latest pixel conversion there. You can auto confirm new appointment meetings. If you don't do this, they'll be set to unconfirmed as the status there. I highly recommend auto confirming unless there's some scenario where you're falsely showing a ton of availability and you're not actually available at those times, which there's certain industries that do that. And they're basically, using language to present like pick your most desired time, but this isn't confirmed. And then the last piece here is payments. You can accept payments. I don't have a payment provider connected, but when you have a payment provider connected, you can actually charge for appointments. So pick a price as a product, and then the condition to actually book an appointment is they have to pay. The next tab on advanced settings is the notifications. You see there's a number of things that you can be notified when. So notified when it's unconfirmed, notified when it's confirmed, notified when they cancel, notified when they reschedule, send a reminder before the appointment, and send follow-up. So all of these, this is the default. I didn't add any of these. These all happen natively by default, but you can see green means enabled, gray means disabled. So they're in here, but they're not enabled. So if I edit each one, I can now enable, because they're disabled by default, some of them. So let's cover the ones that are enabled by default. It's really the in-app for unconfirmed or confirmed. Based on your options previously, it'll make sense what you want to even use here, because let's say, you're setting them all confirmed by default. Don't even bother editing the notification for an unconfirmed appointment because you're not using it. If you want a confirmed notification here, you can edit this, you can enable it, and you can say who's going to receive the confirmation or the appointment notification there. And you can see also who's going to receive the in-app notification. It actually popped up earlier, and I think I'll show again. I'll show you what an in-app notification looks like. So we enabled this, and I can say send it to the contact, to the assigned user who they're meeting with, and you can even have additional emails here. And this would be like, am I sending to team@company.com. And so that's the option there. But you can fully edit out what this looks like, and you can even choose a template if you're working from the template builder there to really customize the experience. And so this is native. It requires no additional automations. It just works as part of the calendar settings area there. We will commonly run a independent workflow nurture reminder sequence because we want to have more date based, but I'll show you the other options that are already in here in terms of what you can do out of the gate. And so I'm actually going to scroll down because the option to allow cancellation and allow a reschedule of a meeting, you can expire those meetings up until. So the idea is you're saying, like, if I said 60 minutes, that means up until 60 minutes, they can reschedule or cancel the meeting on their own. Depending on your business, you might disable this. So, but it is kind of nice in terms of like a self-service there. But it's annoying if they cancel, 10 minutes before the meeting. So you can pick your buffer there in minutes, hours, or days. And so sometimes it'll be like, a day before. So when you immediately book, if you make a change, just cancel or reschedule. If you wait till the day before, then it's kind of confirmed. But I share that because if you're not doing cancellation and reschedule, there's no point in having these notifications. And so here's now what you can set for the cancellation email. What notification do they get? Who's notified? Well, you definitely want to notify you. Probably also want to like give them a confirmation here. But so for all of these, you can actually customize what the email looks like. So by default, it says appointment canceled, and as the start time and time zone, you might want to also clarify like which appointment is canceled or was there a name there. You can say your from email, from address, and these all happen, like this is happening immediately. When they cancel, they get this notification. And you can set that per recipient of the notification. So like I look at the assigned user. This would be like you canceled appointment with name on date. It goes there. For them canceling, they usually know that's what's happening. And then for additional emails, this is like if you're sending it to the team inbox, you can set that as well. But so for each one of these, you could say, if additional emails is non-relevant, you're just going to the contact and assigned user, you're good there. In app, I'm going to go ahead and actually save this to show you. I don't know if it showed up there. There's an in-app notification where it says settings saved. And that's an example. So I've turned on email for cancellation and for reschedule. So what this does is it simplifies the process of notifications where you don't have to have a custom workflow or automation just to have these email automations run, but all of them are running immediately. See this? Except for the reminders. So if I get into the reminder options, if I enable this per email and I look at the contact, you have essentially time-based options of when it's going to trigger the notification. And that's all relative to the appointment start time. So you might say 10 minutes before, that's the default. It's going to email them this notification, right? Personally, I still prefer workflows probably because of the mass use application of it. So we have a reminder sequence that we use for multiple calendars. And so then instead of having to configure the email per calendar, like if we make a change or we want to try a different, we just want to try a sort of different style or different sender or different content in the body, or even a different time-based reminder sequence there, we can do it in one place and apply it to, in our organization, hundreds of calendars. But if it's just you and it's simple and straightforward, this is not a bad way to do it. And you can add more time-based. My encouragement is to start with the furthest out. So you might say, this is going to be 3 days out, and you kind of know based on your range of availability, how far out can they actually book. And then you can set sort of a sequence here. The pros and cons of this method is this allows you to send the reminders frequently, but you can't change what the reminder says. So it's always sort of like a generic reminder. I mean, you can make it specific, but it's always saying the same thing. So 3 days out says the same thing. 10 minutes out says the same thing. So very simple, very convenient there. It's limited to one channel, being email, and then it's also limited to one creative copy, meaning like you can change the words and it's one thing that just sends multiple times. Versus if you create it inside of a workflow, which we'll cover later, you can set different emails depending on how far out it is. And this is a common strategy we'll use to, nurture them a little bit differently depending on how far away the appointment is. Because if they booked 7 days out, you might want to encourage them to meet sooner. It also allows you to send other channels like text messages. But those are the notifications and reminders that are possible right now in the calendar settings here. And then you can allow Google or Outlook to send the invitation and update emails to attendees. I really do like this. This is like the default Google notification of like you've booked a call. People are already associated with it, or same thing with Outlook there. And it's a really effective initial reminder there. And so sometimes we'll commonly disable a independent, call it like appointment reminder email. And we will also typically disable the in-app notifications. This is for us, right? So this comes down to team preference and where do you manage notifications and where do you want to be notified of stuff. But we will, personally, we will usually turn all of these off, but we will turn this one on. So getting the Google notification, the Outlook notification is really cool and helpful, and tends to overcome any deliverability issues, if any should exist, right? So for these emails, these are sent like custom emails through a CRM automation. The Google email is sent natively through Google. So even if our email somehow shows up in the promotions folder, the Google reminder will show up in the inbox as a primary because it's actually being delivered from Google. The last thing you can do here is you can assign contacts to the respective team member each time the appointment is booked. The alternative is to skip assigning the contact if they're already assigned. This is, by default, this kind of makes sense. Like, especially if you're using some sort of like conditional logic where you want to use variables like user variables, like you're saying here, like sometimes what we'll do is depending on who they book with, that's who the reminder will send from. So let's go back to our reminder and to the contact. Might not, just for them, 10 minutes before. From the from name here, if I'm going to use something like user.name and, maybe user email or something like that, at the very least, the name changing in there is really helpful because this will now show the name of the person they're actually meeting with. So this is a personal calendar as an example, but some of these notifications and settings that we're going over actually are consistent across multiple calendar types. But especially as you get into those types of calendars, this is where it's, probably more relevant, this setting here where you can assign contacts to the respective calendar. For this calendar type, this actually doesn't apply, but the advanced settings area is consistent across calendar types here. And then you can skip assigning calendar if they've already been assigned to a contact. There's a few scenarios where maybe that makes sense. Probably if the appointment's not confirmed and it's more of like a, what would you prefer to have? Then you could send them an individual's calendar with real availability based on who they've already been assigned to if they need to meet with the same person they met with before. And the last piece here is customizations. This actually has to do with like the aesthetic, the color. There is the cover image that shows up on the booking page there. There's two styles, Neo and Classic. Most folks now are using Neo, but you can compare the two styles there. And then you've got some color settings that you can set that affect other variables inside of the calendar. And then the actual button here for what the calendar button says. And then you can decide, do you want to show the calendar title, the description, and those details such as the duration time and recurring details. So I'll go ahead and click on preview. Oh, I guess before I hit preview, you do also have custom code. They fully let you customize it, and this is CSS typically, but you can put in, I believe it accepts JavaScript or CSS. And so depending on what you want to do with the calendar, you can do some fancy things out there. We definitely have some custom scripts in as part of HLPT, but out of the box, it's very powerful now, and a lot of the options that people prefer are already part of it natively. I'm gonna go ahead and open up and preview this, and I'll show you kind of the corresponding pieces here. Here was the title. That was the duration date. These were the settings that we mentioned over here. We had the details, duration, date there. The description was this we said earlier, the let's hop on a call, and then the title there. And you can see this is the Neo style calendar, and ours is set up where it shows we've got the calendar before the form. So if I click a date, I select, and then I've got my form, and you see there's the title of that. And so it's, say, book meeting. If I change that up, if I go to classic, and I'm going to, this is actually going to kick us out potentially. Since it was the last screen, there's not a great save this setting area. So I'm going to go back and show you some of the other things that we can do with it. Let's go to forms. We covered that before. And if I reverse the step here, so, and good to know, you can only reorder in the Neo style. So because I choose the classic style, you actually don't have the option of reordering Neo. We'll come back to Neo. Go to our forms and payments, swap it around. So forms at the top there. Save our calendar. And then while you're editing it, you actually have the share option here. And it gives you the 3 same share options that you're going to see from the calendar management screen, where you have just the basic scheduling link. You've got and it kind of tells you the scheduling link is determined by the slug, right? That was that unique slug that we had there. And it adapts to any modification. The permanent link, they're saying, is ideal for if you're using it inside of like a funnel, a website redirect, or ads. It remains constant. It's unaffected by slug changes. So even if you edit the slug, it's not going to be affected there, which is nice because this URL is based on the slug. And so this one's more permanent. You've got one-time links that literally can only be used specifically, and they expire. They can expire there. You can generate new ones. So if you I don't know, for some reason only want to give someone access to it and you're worried they're going to share it with somebody else, this is a great way to do that, and it'll generate a new link and then expire there. And then you also have the embed code, so you can copy and paste this and put it anywhere that you need. And so we see we reversed the order so that it is got the same details there, but now it's going to have the form first, and then it's going to show the calendar second. And we've created our first basic calendar, a personal booking calendar inside of here. Now that we have a personal booking calendar, before we get into some of the other calendar types, because that was a complete walkthrough of the advanced settings in calendars, I want to show you some of the quick actions that exist inside of the calendar view here. And there's 4 icons, and that kind of exposes maybe 7 or 8 things here. You've got the edit calendar, quick access into there. You've got the share calendar options. You have the troubleshooting calendar, which is interesting. So it basically loads the calendar, or at least it loads like the debugged information about the calendar. And so you see it has this troubleshooting view. And so it'll show you why each one of these things are showing. So it's literally showing me like why it's not showing availability. It's, kind of answers why is your calendar looking this way. And so earlier when we referred to a situation where you might have it not showing anything because of the date range of availability in there and a weekend being involved, this is a great way to sort of troubleshoot what your calendar is showing. And the last one is the more options. So 3 quick actions, and this reveals another 4. So you can duplicate a calendar. You can move that calendar to a group. You can also deactivate the calendar and then delete the calendar. So deactivate the calendar makes it so no one can see it and book on it. So if I click on deactivate, but it maintains all of the settings and also the URL. So that slug I told you, which is unique to HighLevel, you can deactivate it so someone can't actually book on it, right? It'll just show a 404 page. You can't access it. But now I can quickly activate it and we're all good. Everything's working all the same. So that's a nice thing there. And then you have the delete calendar option, which will give you a secondary prompt just to confirm you want to delete it. because when it deletes it, it not only deletes the calendar, it also deletes any appointments that were booked on that calendar. So many times, if you're trying to clean things up, but you still want to have the reference data there, it's best to deactivate, then delete, but you do have the option to delete it. Now we're going to look at calendar groups. As I mentioned, this is for organizing how a calendar and how a team interfaces with the data, as well as kind of like availability there. And so from this screen, the new group option is where you want to go. And I might change this to be like sales. That's a common group there, is like the sales team. If you have a round robin calendar, there's the possibility for this information to be visible in the booking process. So just consider that in your naming and your description here, that you don't use words that are meant internally, because they could be viewed externally. That applies in many areas in the calendar here. But so you got the group name, the group description, the default template. This is for that group's booking view of Neo or Classic. Most of the time I recommend Neo. And then as with the other slug option here, you can run into a uniqueness issue. It has to be unique. And so sales is obviously taken. And so sometimes, you can apply your brand or your name to find a truly unique slug. And so now it's actually prompting me immediately that I can add calendars to the group. So if you're starting off and you want to do round robin, sometimes groups is actually the first place to start, because as we saw in the calendar creation process, for anything beyond a personal calendar, it makes sense to put it into a group. And you can even have those personal booking calendars inside of a group. And so like an example of that is, this is Meet with Matt. If I'm on the sales team, I want to move this to the sales group there. And so I might have 3 individual calendars for each one of my salespeople, and all of them inside of the sales group, even though each one of their individual calendars are only for them and their availability. Let's go ahead and create a round robin calendar, which is typically what I recommend for a sales process, because it is designed to maximize availability. And so, you could call it a discovery call or whatever you call that first point of interaction there. And we can, or a demo call sometimes, whatever the first point of interaction with your sales team or demo team is, we can walk through all we have to offer. And then you select your team members. So this is designed, it is designed either to optimize or minimize availability, but it's just designed to consider the calendars of multiple people. And so for sales, it's usually maximizing. And then we've got a URL here. Once again, it's got to be custom. And so let's go brand-sales-team. And similar to the personal booking, we have our kind of like quick phase here. So we saw the deep dive on the personal booking. I'm going to do the quick build out here for the round robin, but because it's round robin, so it creates the calendar, but that's actually kind of incomplete for us. And so we're going to need to go to edit the calendar, because there's some critical things that are set inside of the calendar here that apply mostly to a group setting. And so one of those is the actual meeting location here. And so depending on who it is, you have the extra factor of priority. You can actually set higher priority or lower priority for different sales team members. And what that's going to do is, if they're both available, let's say at noon, both of them have an opening there, it's going to, if someone chooses noon, they don't know who they're meeting with, it's going to book onto the higher priority more often than the lower priority. If they're set to equal priority, then it kind of is just an equal weighting there. But this doesn't, we'll just talk through here. You have the option to optimize for availability or optimize for equal distribution. My recommendation is optimize for availability. If you optimize for equal distribution, what ends up happening is, upon every refresh of the calendar, a different person's availability is shown. This isn't ideal in a sales context, because you might have one person who's fully booked out and another person who's got a ton of availability. And what you don't want is a lead or a prospect to come to the calendar and think you have no available slots, when in fact you do have a ton of available slots. It's just with a different team member that just wasn't chosen on this refresh. And so we typically optimize for availability. We do occasionally set priorities depending on who's performing best. And that's what allows you to do that here. We do have some more. I'm going to try to focus on the settings that are unique that we haven't already covered. And so we have some advanced settings here. These are unique to the round robin process here. So you can actually reassign through round robin when they reschedule, or you can keep the same appointment owner. So if someone reschedules, should it be given to whoever's available at the time that they want based on whatever priority you have, or should they stay with the original person? We typically reassign. That's just what we do. And then your other thing is for a new appointment, do you want to book with the assigned user? And you see it's gonna limit the availability there. So if someone returns, do you want to sort of like, similar to the logic of optimize for equal distribution, only show one person's availability there? Or do you want to continuously say all of these slots are available, reassign them, and just, kind of go with the luck of the draw here? But so if you're doing user assignment, which would be through separate logic, and this is where you can get into advanced round robin rules inside of workflows and automations there, that's when you might want to have them book with the assigned user. So it's going to show the assigned user's calendar instead of maximizing for availability there. And hopefully I'm not getting too confusing here, but you can actually set rules inside of workflows where round robin preferences might be like, I want 80% of the appointments to go with person A and 20% of the appointments to go with person B. In that scenario, to enact that in the calendar, you would actually first assign them a user through the automation, and then you would turn on the preference here to book them with their assigned user rather than just letting them book with as much availability as possible. Telling you from our perspective, we don't run those rules, but I do know there are scenarios and situations where you might want to enact that kind of logic. I'm going to go through these quickly and just focus on the ones that apply specifically to round robin. Otherwise, the settings are the same to what we've covered before. And so here's one specific to round robin, is you can allow them to actually choose their staff member. So a good example of this is when someone's in a service industry where they sort of have their preference. They have their esthetician who they like, they have their barber who they prefer. And so allowing them to actually select their staff would be part of the earlier process where they're choosing, this is who I want to book with. And then they're basically seeing that person's calendar. So it simplifies the calendar management process because I can have all of the team members on there for book a haircut, but it allows them to now say like, oh, I actually want to have Jessica cut my hair. And so that's something specific to the round robin option. And so you don't have to have 5 different individual calendars. You can have one sort of team calendar, a round robin calendar, and then just open up the option for people to book with a specific team member or staff member. And I believe that's it for round robin calendars. Like I said, all the settings that we covered for personal booking calendar are the same there. Let's take a look at the class booking calendar. Now we're actually getting into, a little bit more unique and nuanced here. So this is typically if it's sort of like a one-to-many situation. I'm not intending it to be a one-on-one call or even a 2 of my team members and 1 of their team member call. This is intended to be, I might have 10 people allowed to come into the class. And this also starts to interact with some of the other, variables that are inside of the calendar system here. And so you've got your name, which I might call this as like a training call. And we're going to go with learn to dance with Matt. Who's attending this? This is Matt or the help desk team there. And we're going to go with dance with Matt. Duration. And now we have seats per class. So this is how many people can book in the same slots here. So this is a group booking calendar or a class booking calendar. And so you can allow people to book, you can have more people attend. And so this is the limitation of the class there. So I might say like, I'm allowed to have 20 per class, We got our simple availability. We have our meeting location now that actually shows in the simple booking form. And then we have our advanced settings as well. We'll cover which one of those are unique to the class booking style. But the meeting location, it says here, is like, these are going to be links in there, and you can do Zoom, you could do an address. There's, the similar things that we have in the advanced settings. But for the class booking, they bring it to this quick book here. Oh, and that actually makes sense as well. The meeting location is required for a class because it's in here. So they know it's going to have some sort of thing, but this is why it could be as simple as a Zoom link, or it could be an actual location, because there has to be a place for them to attend. And it's not going to be like you calling all of their phone numbers at the same time. So quick out of the box, it gives you the links. Like I said, it's got the quick booking there for folks that are just in a rush. But for this training or our group calendar here, there are some things inside of the advanced settings that you're going to want to pay attention to. So I'm going to call this class booking, just to keep it easy for us to organize. You have the date specific blockouts again. You have the seat per class that's now part of some of these other like buffer settings area there. You can set it as a recurring meeting. So this could be, it's repeating daily, weekly, monthly, or a custom schedule there. And then what you can do is if slots are unavailable, you can decide to allow them to book in the next available slot, or to basically skip the booking. Don't allow them to book. So you can have a setting here, because we're recognizing it's a recurring meeting. So it could be a recurring daily. I could have a class every single day and it's repeating daily, and you can set how many times you want it to repeat. I want to repeat 365. Guess I can't repeat more than 24. But I can set it to repeat daily for up to 24 times. And then I can say, if they're booking and it's already maxed out, I already have 20 folks, should I let it overbook and keep it as an unconfirmed appointment? Should I keep it as confirmed? Or should I just push them into the next available slot? So they're choosing this time. This is what they wanted, and it's basically going to let them book, but just on the next one that's available there. For the forms and payment, this is similar to everything that we configured before, although, more commonly you'll see the payment options for kind of classes there, and our notifications process there. All of these settings are the same. And this is a unique setting to the class here, is you can show how many seats per slot. So it'll tell them how many folks are attending the class, basically. Or you can hide this. So if you want to, they can see, hey, there's 4 seats left, or they don't see that at all, and they just book into it. So by default there, it will show them what's available depending on the slot. So they can kind of see like, okay, there's 10 people already attending this class, and there's only 2 people attending this class. And that covers our class booking calendar. Now we're going to look at collective booking. So collective booking is designed, you could think of it like the opposite side of a round robin calendar, whereas a round robin calendar maximizes availability. You get multiple calendars and you see the overlap and as many appointment slots as possible. A collective booking calendar actually minimizes availability. So this could be, for example, this could be for an interview where you need to have 2 people on your team interviewing 1 person there. And so you need to find times that work for both, essentially all 3 participants. The person booking, they're choosing a time, but what's presented is times that work for the 2 contingent, interviewers in this case. And so let's hop on an interview. In this case, it would kind of not make sense if you didn't have multiple team members here, because that's by design. You're making the collective contingency there, and interview with Matt. And per usual, you've got a quick confirm to deploy this, but you're really going to want to go to those advanced settings. So I'm just going to go ahead and click into those. We're going to cover some of the unique things to the collective booking. So 1, you can put it in a group. You don't have to put this in a group, but that's for, like I said, reporting organization there. You can decide on who is the owner of the meeting because it knows that both people have to be there. Settings like meeting location can be set on an individual user basis. And so that's what we're seeing there is the default. Right now, the default meeting location for this help desk user is just the word Zoom. And so you can decide who's the owner. What does that mean? Whoever's the owner is what is going to be the used meeting location. So if one person's the key, owner of the meeting, it's going to be their Zoom room that we're going to meet in, or their meet room, or their Teams room, or their address, their office address, whatever it might be. And you see that as like the meeting location is set to one of the participants. So that's unique to the collective booking here. For the availability, a lot of this is the same, but you can also set, I think actually this is similar, but the maximum bookings per day you can set. I believe that's actually applies in other calendars as well, but we may have not covered that earlier. So those are the key differences there. So think of it as like the opposite end of a round robin calendar where you've got multiple team members and it's actually showing the minimum, only showing the slots, where both, or it could be as many, folks that you put into the calendar, where everyone assigned to the calendar is available. Now we're going to look at the last two kind of like outlier cases or more advanced calendars, more unique calendars here, as we have the event calendar and the service booking calendar. Before we get into those, we do need to like add some other elements to really make use of them. And so the first is groups. So I'm going to actually create another group here. We're going to create a group called pet grooming to demonstrate some of the use cases of like a service calendar or an equipment calendar here. And so we'll go with a pet grooming. Grooming calendar. And then we've got I'll do another calendar, or another group rather, that is called pet supplies. Like if it's training supplies. So now we're going to look at our rooms and equipment before we get into our service menu here. And so if you are let's say, actually I could add another calendar in there called pet training. So imagine you've got a business that's just all things pets, and you can imagine that there are certain rooms where they conduct specific activities. We're going to clear this out and keep this fresh, like training or even grooming, right? And so I'm going to add a room here, and this is going to be called Grooming Room A. It's got capacity for one person at a time, let's say in that room, and we're not going to assign it to a calendar yet, but we'll come back and do that. Actually, do we have no, because we haven't created our service calendar yet. So we've got our grooming room A. We might have our training room A that actually has capacity for 8, and maybe that's enough as an example here. So we've got our training room A where we could have 10 people in using the training room A. And then we've got our grooming room A, which could only have one person using the grooming room at a time. And then on the equipment side of it, we might have our training fence, and we might have 2 of them. And then, so the out of service quality here is if you have non-functional things, so it's like managing equipment, like are they in need of repair? Are they out of service? Did you used to have them, but they're not actually working now? We'll come back and add this to calendar. But so we got our training fence, and then we'll have our bath. And we'll also say that we have, let's say we've got 1 bath. 1 bath, 2 fences. I'm going to go ahead and create our room B2, which also has capacity for 1. So you can start to imagine in our everything pet store. We've got 2 grooming rooms. We got 1 training room, and we have 2 training fences and 1 bath. You can already start to imagine the limitation or contingency here, right? So even though I have 2 grooming rooms, I only have 1 bath. You're probably thinking, Matt, you should buy another bath. But this is what we've got right now in terms of material, and this is going to make more sense as we start to build out a service calendar and a service menu. So now we're going to go ahead and create a calendar. We'll do the service calendar here. And this is going to be based on the service name. And so we're going to call it, this could be very specific, or it could be very generic. We got our grooming, and we've got a staff member who's going to be in charge of the grooming there. There's probably a specific type. Let's call it like a quick trim. And they've got their quick trim. There's the duration on it. We're going to go straight into advanced settings here because we definitely need to use that for this kind of calendar here. So the service-based calendar. And most of these are the same in terms of availability, buffers, all of that. You could definitely want to have like payment in this kind of thing here. But at the bottom, you see, I'm going to make sure there's no other extra options we haven't covered. It really comes down to, you can select the staff. So similar to what we've seen before, but it's the rooms and equipment. So this is where you can decide what room and what equipment is needed for when someone books one of these things. So you'd be like, okay, well, I need, which room do I need? I need grooming room A, and then I also need a bath. I believe for this calendar, if I pick 2 rooms, it's going to block out both of those rooms. So in our case, we could have different types of grooming happening in different rooms there. But it's like, this is what's going to be booked when the thing is booked. So really probably end up having, potentially, well, I'll show you how it works with the services. So we booked our calendar. We're going to go ahead and click save. And so this is per service. So we've got, this was our quick trim. We assigned it to room A there. Let's create another calendar for a service booking here. And we'll call this a long cut. That, could be the same person. Grooming, long cut, advanced settings, go to our rooms and equipment. It's also an A. It also requires a bath. And we'll do another service here. And so you see, as you're building this out, you create a calendar per service that's offered. And so we could do and actually I can show you the class booking. So the class booking can work with equipment as well. We saw that, but we didn't have that tied to it. So let's do one other, and we'll call this a dog training. And this will be a one-on-one. This one staff member is very busy. And so it's like all pets dog training. Come into our advanced settings here. For our availability, there's nothing unique. What I wanted to see is if the service can be one of many, or I think it has to be class and then attached to the pieces. So this was dog training, and so they only need the training room A, and they're going to need that training fence. And so you start to see we've got all of these types of calendars that are associated with different services in creating the service calendar there. The class booking, which we looked at before, is also could be like associated with equipment, which I'll do as an example there. But the event calendar, I want to make sure we cover this, is for non-associated staff. So the example here might be a barbecue, and or what's the open house? So they're doing a barbecue open house event, which they want people to RSVP to at their pet shop, but they don't actually need a specific staff member there. So we're going to set in the location. You can give it a group just for organizing how many registrants become assigned to it. And you can actually link it to a specific calendar for external events there, so that it's it's seen on like a Google Calendar or any sort of other interactions that you have there. But this is not, you see, even if you have availability, these are not actually booked to a person. So this could be like tours are sometimes run like this. If I was doing an open house, I go to availability because this is a one-time event. It's going to be like, it's not generally available. I'm going to add a specific date and say, well, we're running the event on the 17th at literally, 9 a.m. It's not even an all-day event. It's just 9 to 10. And if I come back to our meeting details here, or our availability, we're going to go with 60 minutes. 60 minutes. And you see it's only available on that one day, and I might run it that way. So that's our event calendar, where it's disassociated from any team member. One current limitation is that with equipment and rooms, you can do that for anything that has like a one registrant at a time, where they're the one person experiencing it. What doesn't currently work is if I have a class calendar. We look at the class calendar that we created, and I want to associate that class with a specific room. So to say like that room that I created, that's no longer available. I don't have a way to associate a one-to-many class with a specific room resource. Even though I have a meeting location, I can't associate it with a resource as the meeting location or a room as the meeting location. I can talk about that, but if you were hoping to allow, I don't know, a complex scenario where you have sort of like teachers will teach classes only if someone books into it, that's just not possible. So like the assumption there is that if you're doing a group class and you're giving it the room, you're kind of pre-blocking off that room is for this group class. And so you would, and whenever it's available, whenever it's happening, you would just pre-book that off. So then the room would potentially be available for one-on-ones, but it would never be available during the group slot, if that makes sense. The other key thing with a service calendar, we've created all the services in here, is the actual service menu. So we come over to here and we need to now create our service menu. And so this is going to be the general name of our services here. And so I think we were talking about like it's pet services. And we can name this as sort of like the menu, right? Is like what's happening is this is where they could go and see all the things that are offered. You can set the custom form. You can allow them to add guests. They can select multiple services, or you can disable that. They can only pick one. You can allow them to choose the staff, don't choose the staff. And so the next piece here for selecting the services, before we can do anything effective for our service menu, we need to put them into groups. You see, we have the training, the supplies, the grooming. We're really only using 2 of those, but so I'm going to go ahead and add these to a particular group out of unassigned. So this was a long cut, which is going to be part of grooming. Our training is going to be part of training. Our one-on-one training is going to be part of training. And I think our quick trim is going to be part of grooming. And so now in pet training and pet grooming, we have 2 calendars each. If we go to our service menu, I've already created the pet services there. I can edit this. And now when I go to select my services, I can select all, and you can see it'll drop down and select the items underneath here. What's interesting and worth noting is that when you create new calendar items, it does not by default add them to your menu just because they're in the group, but they do need to be in the groups to show up inside of the services menu there. So you need a service calendar in a group in order to attach it to a menu. And as you see, we've got our pet training, which is the one-on-one, and our grooming options there. Now, when we go to arranging our services, this is where we can, sort of decide how we want that to look and feel from a order. And I'm going to show you what it actually looks like. And so our share button, very similar to what we saw with the calendar in general. They also have this quick action drop down where I can just copy any one of the items that I need there. I'll go ahead and open up our menu to show you what that looks like. And so here's a very basic version of the services menu where they can see, sort of like the groups are also organized at the top. So if it gets really long, they can kind of scroll down to the areas there. But the general design is the name of the group, the calendars that are inside of the group, the service calendars that are inside of the group there. So that's how the organization is the name of the group and the calendars that are inside of the group. And that's how it's built out. And you've got a prompting to book. You can kind of like follow the promptings there based on the settings that you set. So just me in terms of guests. This one had the option to select the staff, meet with them, confirm, and then you've got the dates and times that you can choose to do this. So all of these calendars, similar to any of the other calendars, allow custom code. So if there's a particular thing you want to change the style of, the look of, you can actually just edit that, with probably a little help from ChatGPT and some custom CSS. But everything from this moment on, where it says selected services, this is actually just that. Actually, I'd say from this point on, this is the calendar of that service. But because we allow them to add more services, you see it has the button to add more services there. So I can add my dog training, and then I can also add a quick trim, and it functions kind of like a menu that you'd expect and is more common in the services industry there. And you can confirm, pick your slots, choose your time, and have it done. What's interesting is like allowing them to book multiple services may not make sense for this fictitious company because you probably wouldn't book the dog training at the same time as the quick trim because the limitation there is the dog. However, if it was like an aesthetics, or a massage, and you were booking, the advanced stone option with the scent therapy option, that would all make sense for that sort of industry there. But that is all you need to know when it comes to the services menu. And so this covers how to create a calendar, as well as how to create all those types of calendars, everything from personal booking to a services calendar there. But there's even more that you can do in the calendars area. At the top here, we actually have 4 options. There's calendars, which we went through, which is calendars, the service menu, rooms and equipment, and creating all of those. Then you have some wide preferences for your calendars area, which is worth covering. So in preferences, you've got when does your week start? So this is what the view option for calendars. When you see the bookings happen inside of HighLevel, does your week start on Monday? Does it start on Sunday? Does it start on Saturday? Those are the 3 options that you're presented there. In terms of the services, do you want to even see the option when you go to calendars? So you can actually disable the services menu, the rooms and equipment. If you just don't want to see that, or it feels confusing, or you don't want your team confused by it, you can actually turn those off. Here, I'll show you. If I turn those off and I save these preferences, when we go back to calendars, you'll see you won't have those options there. The widget preferences, you can set the language, you can set the time format. This is basically, sort of like a military versus a 12-hour cycle there of showing just the time, or showing, or like military time or AM PM. And then you've got your view options similar to this in-app option here. The in-app option here is how the days of the week show. The view options in the widget, this is like on the booking widget, what's going to show there for the start of the week. So Sunday, Monday, Saturday as the options. But go ahead and save these preferences. We come back to calendars. You'll see at the top, you no longer have the service options or even the service calendars. It does not prevent you from being able to create a service booking. However, if we had not done some of those conditions of equipment, the menu, the rooms, it wouldn't make sense, because you would get in here into the advanced options. Or let's just edit one of these. I'd get into the advanced options of this service, and you just don't have that tab for services and equipment. So the same settings wouldn't show up. And so you kind of would be able to do basic non-menu related options and non-equipment or room related options when it came to services. The next piece here is availability. As you see, it's showing me a access not granted. I'm going to link to the skeleton key. If you're not familiar with the skeleton key in HighLevel, I've got another video that goes over the skeleton key. Definitely good to know, because right now it's showing like I'm not part of this account, so I can't see what the availability is here. But if you're a user inside of the account, this is where they can set their user availability. So we talked about like wide availability on the calendar. The user availability is a process of narrowing it in. You might have, especially for like round robin or group calendars, you might allow anybody to book 24/7, but an individual user, based on their time zone or their preferences or their work schedule, will have less availability there. And so that's managed in availability. And similar to that is the connections area. So connections is where you actually connect to external calendars like Google. You connect to video conferencing software like Zoom, and you actually do all of those integrations and connections for the person. The screen that you're seeing right here is because, as I mentioned, we don't exist inside of this account. But I'll actually just pull up. This is what it looks like if you have a user inside of the account. There is, you've got the availability, and that user can set those individual times that they want to limit their availability. And the last tab here is the connections one. This is where the user would actually connect to like an external calendar, like a Google. They can connect to video conferencing things, and then even the organic booking. This has to do with the Google Business Profile when it references that organic booking in there. And so for connecting to Google Calendar to sync, Zoom to generate that meeting link, or even connecting to the organic option on your Google Business Profile, these are where all of those connections can take place. And then the last piece here is you can set in private mode for synced events. If you don't want the third-party calendar, like if only you want to see the third-party calendar and other folks inside of the account, if you have other users, won't see other things that you put on your calendar, if that makes sense. So like other shared users will only see the name and title of events or details of events that were created from within the account. So that's the other setting in here that's relevant. But so calendars, preferences, availability, and connections are the 4 aspects of calendars. And then of course the calendars list is where you do most of the managing and organizing the calendars themselves. You've got the ability to sort this as we start to add more in here. It's like, oh man, it'd be really helpful to only see either the active calendars or drafted calendars, types of calendars. If you like, I only want to see the service-based calendars in there, or calendars that are owned by anyone or just yourself. Those are a couple other filters that help you to navigate it and make it not feel as confusing or overwhelming there. And you can always search a particular calendar, because we do have some accounts that have hundreds of calendars in them. And these are really helpful shortcuts to navigate it and make the most of it. As I promised, I want to give you a bonus insight into some calendar automations. you saw the notifications and reminders that you can do natively within the calendar settings there, the calendar advanced settings. But there are plenty of situations where it makes sense to pair a calendar with a workflow. From the calendar settings, we're going to go back to the main area and then over to the automations tab here. And I'm going to create a workflow, and I'm going to actually start from a recipe. You can start from scratch. I often do, but there is actually a recipe specifically for a calendar, like an appointment reminder sequence here. And as I'm going through it, it's the bottom one or near the end is the appointment confirmation reminder. So I'm gonna go ahead and select that recipe, and this is just gonna fast track some of the action items that you need to have inside of the automation. So the benefit of pairing an automation or a workflow with your calendar is because if you have multiple calendars and you want to share those reminders, this now makes those reminders one place you need to manage them. You can change the text or the copy or have certain custom preferences, and it's all in one place. You don't have to edit in 10 different places just because you have 10 different calendars. With the recipe open, you see there's two aspects of what create a workflow. There's a trigger, what determines how they get started in this automation, and there's the actions that happen. So our trigger here is the appointment. It's actually the appointment status is the trigger that they have by default. So when an appointment has the status of confirmed, which would happen if the appointment is auto-confirmed, and they have the event type filter on here for normal. There are kind of like, you can set it differently for recurring. So it might be, this is typically what you want, is you want a reminder sequence on a normal type of appointment, not a recurring one. And the status is confirmed. So this would not run if it was unconfirmed. Or new, I guess, is the unconfirmed status there. It's definitely not going to, it's not going to put them in here if they cancel or they no show or at the end of the call here. So confirmed is typically, this is the best filter for it. And you see a couple things are happening. You've got a confirmation email that would be similar to what HighLevel has baked into their options there. You can change the sender name, the email, the sender email, the notification, all of the aspects about it. So it's very common. We have immediate confirmation there. You can also add extra actions for SMS if you want. Out of the box, this recipe has an immediate confirmation. It has a 24 hours before it sends an email. It has a 1 hour before it sends an email, and it also sends a text message 1 hour before. This is helpful because if they're going to, sometimes if you confirm the appointment immediately via text, they might reply stop. Just because they don't want you to text them a lot. And this way you're like, okay, I gave you the text reminder right before the appointment, so hopefully you show up to the appointment. And that's just the reality of, depending on the channel that you use to remind them, the more or less likely are going to be to see it. And so text messages definitely get the highest open rate of any form of communication. Just look at your life. And email, much more variable there. And so it's got a 24 hours before, a single email, an hour before, an email and a text minute reminder, and then 5 minutes before, a email and then another SMS. And so out of the box, this recipe is pretty good. You can get more creative with it, and you can also even elongate this. So if you wanted to add additional actions that are longer wait times, what are you sending 3 days before, 7 days before? The cool thing with these wait steps is they are set to skip all outbound action until the next wait step. So if I start off with a wait, I got my immediate confirmation, and then I add a wait step in here that's, well, actually, I'll show you. It's even cool. You can just clone this. So I'm going to copy this, just this action over here, and then I'm going to copy this 24-hour email, just this action over here. I'm going to retitle this to be, let's go 3 days before. We're going to make sure this is set to 3 days. So now our recipe looks like immediate confirmation. That's great. And then 3 days before, and then I got to retitle this email. This is our 3 days before email. If they book 2 days out, it'll just skip this sequence here. They won't get the 3-day reminder email. They'll only get the 24-hour reminder email. And so as a practical example, when you're forced to book out further appointments there's usually a correlation between no shows and ultimately a greater chance of waste of time or lack of success the further out an appointment is booked. And so we will put some nurture sequence and process in there that actually encourages them to meet sooner. You can even do notifications in here. Like if it's 3 days before and they get this email, we might add a manual action to call for our team. So basically pinging someone to send a call in there, or maybe webhook out and send an action to, alert. I mean, now there's so many things in here. I think we even have a, let's go back here, Slack you can run. So like send a Slack notification to the account of like, hey, they got an appointment in 3 days. Maybe just give them a call and see if they want to hop on sooner. And so there's an example of the automations, the workflows you can pair with calendars. If you have enjoyed this, if this has been helpful, any section of this has been good and useful for you, I would appreciate it if you let me know in the comments. If you subscribe, we're creating content all the time. And if you want another completely free course, A to Z, with everything you need to know about HighLevel's AI, and all they've got going on with AI Employee, I will link to that right over here.